Welcome to the Vertical Sky Journal, the podcast that brings you everything you could ever want to know about Kilimanjaro. The climbing and the fitness, altitude and nutrition, the environment, the wildlife, and the people at the heart of the mountain. Today, the great dinner table debate of world trekking, Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp, the summit or the journey. One puts you on top of something, the other walks you to the bottom of everything.
It really is the ultimate choice, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, imagine you have to choose between two exhilarating, but quite torturous holidays.
Right, because neither is exactly a relaxing beach getaway.
Exactly. One asks you to push your absolute physical limits in the freezing dark just to, well, touch the roof of a continent.
And the other has you walking for 2 straight weeks through these remote, high-altitude valleys.
Spinning prayer wheels along the way, only to reach a pile of rocks where you can't even see the mountain you came to celebrate.
Which is always a bit of a shock to people, actually.
Yeah, it is. So, we are deep diving into this ultimate bucket list choice today. We're drawing our insights from a really exceptional guide written by Graham Noble for Vertical Sky.
Yes, and our mission today is to completely deconstruct these 2 legendary treks.
Right. We want to move beyond just the simple numbers of physical elevation. The goal is to understand exactly what each journey demands of you physically, culturally, and mentally.
Because they demand very different things from you.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are comparing 2 completely opposite types of prizes here.
We absolutely are. To truly grasp these treks, we first have to define what success actually looks like on each mountain.
Because the end goals sort of dictate everything else about the experience, don't they?
Precisely. The primary contrast is quite profound. Kilimanjaro offers a definitive summit. You are aiming for Uhuru Peak.
Which is the highest point in Africa, standing at 5,895 meters.
Exactly. It's an achievement you earn step by grueling step. Everest Base Camp, by contrast, sits slightly lower at 5,364 meters.
But the objective there isn't a summit at all.
No, the objective is simply to stand at the foot of the highest mountain on Earth. The guide puts it beautifully, actually.
How so?
Well, Kilimanjaro is a thing you did. It's a physical triumph. Everest Base Camp is a place you visit. It's much more of a pilgrimage.
I see. And, wait, there is a detail regarding that pilgrimage that completely astonished me when I read the source material.
Oh, about the view.
Yes. We naturally think of Everest Base Camp as this, well, ultimate viewing platform. The name itself implies you are staring directly at the face of the mountain.
It does, but the reality is that Everest Base Camp itself does not actually have a view of Everest's peak.
Which is staggering. You walk all that way for nearly 2 weeks, and you can't even see the top of the mountain you came to revere. That feels almost like a geographic trick.
It catches so many trekkers entirely off guard. But you have to understand the sheer geography of the Khumbu Glacier.
Right. It's tucked away, isn't it?
Yeah. Base Camp sits tucked under the massive shoulder of the surrounding mountains, primarily the Nuptse Ridge, which just completely blocks the peak of Everest from view.
Why would they put the camp where you can't see the mountain then?
Well, the camp is located there to provide practical climbing access to the dangerous Khumbu icefall for mountaineering expeditions.
Ah, so it's for the climbers, not to provide scenery for trekkers.
Exactly. To obtain that classic postcard panorama of the Everest peak, trekkers have to undertake a pre-dawn climb up to a rocky ridge called Kalapathar.
Which reaches 5,545 meters, right?
It does. But Kalapathar is essentially just a walking viewpoint, not a true mountain peak. So there is no real summit on the Everest Base Camp trip.
The prize is just the place itself. The journey through the Khumbu region, the Sherpa culture, and standing amidst the immensity of the mountain range.
Precisely. It's all about the journey.
The best analogy I can offer to clarify this fundamental difference is, comparing a marathon to the Camino de Santiago.
Oh, that's a very good way of looking at it.
Right. I mean, Kilimanjaro is similar to training for a marathon. You endure the physical preparation, you face the grueling event, and your entire psychological focus is on crossing that definitive finish line.
And Everest Base Camp is comparable to walking the Camino.
Exactly. The daily rhythm of walking, the distinct places you sleep, the monasteries you pass, and the people you meet, that constitutes the actual reward.
That analogy captures the psychological distinction perfectly, and I think it brings us directly to the physical reality of these 2 environments.
Because Kilimanjaro reaches a higher physical elevation, standing 350 meters above even Kalapathar, people naturally assume it's simply the harder trek.
They do, yes. But how altitude actually affects the human body on these two specific routes is entirely different.
We really have to look at the mechanics of the ascent, don't we? The timelines completely dictate that physiological difference.
Absolutely. Kilimanjaro is typically a 6 to 9 day fully supported expedition. Everest Base Camp is a 12 to 14 day tea house journey.
So if the altitude experience on Everest is a slow process, what is actually happening inside your body compared to the rapid ascent of Kilimanjaro?
Well, let's examine the brilliant biological framing from the text. The spike versus the soak.
Right, Kilimanjaro represents the spike, I assume.
Yes. You ascend and descend within a single week. Your body is forcefully thrust into a low-oxygen environment.
Which culminates in that one massive heroic summit night.
During that final push, you wake up at midnight and climb a vertical kilometer to reach Uhuru Peak.
And at 5,895 meters, the air contains, what, roughly half the oxygen it does at sea level?
Exactly half. Every single step requires immense willpower. Your muscles are screaming for oxygen, your heart rate elevates dramatically to pump whatever oxygen it can find, and your lungs are burning.
Brutal, really. And then you reach the summit, experience your triumph, and then you have to descend even further down the mountain, all in one continuous push.
So the exposure to extreme altitude is intense but brief. It's an immense physical exertion.
And Everest Base Camp is the soak. The timeline stretches out significantly, which changes the physical demand entirely.
Exactly. Everest Base Camp requires 2 weeks of sustained walking and sleeping at serious altitude. You're dealing with chronic oxygen deprivation.
Because you spend night after night sleeping above 4,000 meters and eventually above 5,000 meters.
Right. The biological challenge here is a slow metabolic process. Your body has to continually produce more red blood cells to compensate for the thinner air.
So you have to build in those active acclimatization days in places like Namche Bazaar and Dingboche.
Yes. Following the mountaineering rule of climb high, sleep low, you hike up to a higher elevation during the day to trigger your body's adaptation response and then descend back to the village to sleep.
So the spike asks for one heroic effort, whereas the soak asks for 2 weeks of unrelenting patience as your physiology slowly adapts.
That's the perfect summary.
So if you are listening to this, you're probably mentally calculating which type of suffering your own body prefers. If someone is terrified of failing, which route is actually kinder on the body?
Well, it depends entirely on the nature of your fear. If your primary worry is sustained endurance over multiple weeks, Kilimanjaro is kinder.
Because it asks for a shorter commitment of time and a shorter period of sleeping poorly in thin air.
Exactly. But if your primary worry is facing one single brutal night of sheer physical exhaustion, then Everest Base Camp is kinder.
Because day for day, the Everest Base Camp Trail is a gentler walk.
It is. There is no single day in Nepal that compares to the sheer physical devastation of Kilimanjaro's summit night.
And we should probably note that neither trek requires any actual technical climbing skills, do they?
No, not at all. There are no ropes, no crampons, and no sheer cliff faces to scale.
But both shapes of altitude can produce real illness if you are unprepared.
Absolutely. And both reward the exact same virtues. Strict hydration, careful pacing, and absolute honesty with your guides about your physical symptoms.
Okay, let's move from the internal biology to the external environment. If the soak means you are living at 5,000 meters for days on end, where are you actually sleeping to survive that?
The contrast in accommodation really sets the tone for the entire trip.
Right, because on Kilimanjaro, you are sleeping in expedition tents.
Yes, your personal crew carries these tents, and they build your camp every single night as you pass through 5 distinct climate zones.
You start in a sweltering, dense rainforest, move up through a heath and moorland zone, cross a stark, lunar alpine desert, and finally reach the freezing Arctic summit.
You're essentially experiencing a journey from the equator to the North Pole in a matter of days.
Which is total wilderness isolation. Contrast that with the Everest route.
Right. On the Everest trek, you sleep in Sherpa tea houses. These are simple, permanent mountain lodges constructed of stone and wood.
So they provide actual beds, communal dining rooms heated by a central stove, and hot meals.
Often burning dried yak dung for fuel, actually. And a staple meal is dal bhat, a traditional bottomless lentil and rice dish that essentially fuels the entire Himalayan mountain range.
You are walking along the most famous trail in the world, traveling from the famous Lukla flight up through Namche Bazaar, Tengboche, and Dingboche. I want to visualize this daily reality. On the Everest Trail, you wake up in a tea house. What does that morning actually look and feel like?
Well, you wake up in a small, unheated wooden room. It is freezing. You can literally see your breath in the air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You pack your sleeping bag and head down to the communal dining room, which is the warm heart of the tea house. The central stove is roaring. Trekkers from all over the world are drinking hot tea, and you eat a massive bowl of porridge before stepping out onto the trail.
And the sounds must be incredible.
They are. As you walk, you hear the jingling of bells indicating a train of yaks carrying supplies. You cross massive, swaying steel suspension bridges draped in colorful prayer flags, suspended high above roaring glacial rivers.
It sounds like a deeply sensory, shared human experience. The vibes are just vastly different. On the Everest trek, you're walking past ancient monasteries. You see those prayer flags snapping in the wind. And I read you even encounter permanent bakeries impossibly serving hot apple pie at 4,000 meters.
You do. What's fascinating here is how profound the cultural immersion is on the Everest Base Camp trek.
Right. You are walking in the company of one of the great mountain cultures on Earth.
The trail is sociable, storied, and often busy. You are traveling through a living culture. Kilimanjaro offers something entirely different.
Absolute wilderness immersion.
Exactly. Once you pass through the entry gate on Kilimanjaro, there are no villages. There are no bakeries. Your traveling community consists strictly of your own crew.
So when you reach camp at the end of the day, your tents are already pitched.
Right. Your porters bring you a bowl of warm water to wash your face. You eat dinner in a private mess tent with your specific group. It is a highly private, personal expedition.
And when you make that final push to the summit in the freezing darkness, the mountain feels entirely yours.
Yes. The summit night belongs exclusively to your group, culminating under a canopy of stars that feels intensely personal.
That wilderness aspect sounds incredibly appealing for someone seeking isolation. But when we transition to the logistics of actually making the trip happen, I must admit a preconception here. Well, because Everest Base Camp features established tea houses, permanent villages, and existing infrastructure, it must be vastly cheaper to organize than a fully supported, catered tent expedition on Kilimanjaro, where a crew has to carry absolutely everything.
Right. It is a perfectly logical assumption, but comparing the logistics reveals a different reality entirely.
Really?
Yes. The text points out that properly run versions of both treks sit in the exact same broad financial territory.
So once you factor in international flights, internal travel, national park permits, and ethical support staff, both will cost a few $1,000s.
Precisely. And we must address a crucial ethical warning from the source regarding these costs. On both mountains, if you find a cheap version, it is cheap because they quietly remove something.
Ah, the cheap trap. And what they usually remove is the welfare of the local staff.
Exactly. If your trek costs less than a standard market rate, it is highly likely the operator quietly removed fair pay and safe conditions for the porters carrying your world up the mountain.
Paying a fair price ensures they are equipped safely with proper boots and warm clothing and provided with adequate sleeping conditions.
Right. Ethical trekking requires a realistic budget, regardless of the continent. But beyond the financial aspect, the logistical calendars for these mountains are completely different.
EBC has strict seasonal windows, doesn't it?
It does. Roughly March to May, and then October to November. And the entire itinerary hangs on the weather-prone flight into the short runway at Lukla.
That's the one carved into a cliff face, right?
Yes, and weather frequently delays flights in either direction, meaning you have to build significant slack into your travel plans. Furthermore, guided trekking is now the norm, and in most cases a strict requirement in Nepal.
Whereas Kilimanjaro is far more flexible.
Much more. You can climb it in almost any month of the year. There are no internal flights required to reach the mountain once you land at the international airport, and you can flex the dates around your own schedule.
This logistical simplicity certainly appeals to those with rigid holiday windows. Well, we have laid out the physiological demands of the spike and the soak. We've compared the living culture of the Khumbu to the wilderness isolation of Tanzania. We've examined the logistics and the costs. It is time to answer the ultimate question.
The big one.
If you are fortunate enough to want to do both in your lifetime, how do you sequence these adventures? Which one should you book first?
The answer depends entirely on the ultimate prize you seek. If you are drawn to the cultural history, the monasteries, and the sheer scale of the greatest mountain range on Earth, Everest Base Camp is your destination.
You go to the Khumbu for the pilgrimage.
Exactly. But if you're stirred by the prospect of achievement, the desire to stand on top of something enormous simply because you earned it, then Kilimanjaro is the definitive answer. You come to Tanzania for the triumph. Both sides of this debate are completely right.
But if the plan is indeed to complete both in a lifetime, the source gives a very clear recommendation.
It does. Do Kilimanjaro first.
I want to explore the reasoning behind that sequence. Why start with the spike?
Because Kilimanjaro serves as the perfect education in high-altitude trekking. Because it is a highly supported, intense, one-week effort, it safely teaches you exactly how your specific body handles serious altitude.
Ah, so you learn your pacing, you understand your hydration needs, and you discover your physical limits in a concentrated environment.
Right, you find out exactly what altitude sickness feels like for your specific physiology, whether it manifests as a headache, nausea, or fatigue. You learn how your body reacts to the thinner air without committing to a multi-week expedition.
And armed with that profound self-knowledge, your 2-week soak at Everest Base Camp will feel comfortable rather than anxiety-inducing.
Precisely. You walk into the Khumbu region already carrying a summit of your own.
The mountain that crowns you first makes every mountain after it feel like an old friend.
I love that. It is a magnificent way to sequence a lifetime of adventure. Everest Base Camp remains the greatest journey in world walking. Kilimanjaro remains the greatest summit in world walking. The only mistake you can possibly make is expecting one to be the other.
That's a perfect summary.
Before we close this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a final thought to ponder.
Please do.
In our modern world, we are frequently obsessed with the summit selfie. We crave that singular, easily recognizable moment of triumph to prove we achieved something difficult.
We really do.
But does the sustained 2-week soak of a cultural pilgrimage actually require a deeper, quieter kind of mental endurance? Does achieving the highest physical point always equal the highest personal growth? Or does the journey change you more than the peak?
What a brilliant question to end on. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, do subscribe so you never miss the latest from the Vertical Sky Journal. You will find a full written version of this episode over on our journal at vertical-sky.com. And we would love you to come and say hello on Instagram, where we are at VERTICALSKYTZW. Until next time, pole, and keep dreaming of the mountain.